What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. This is strictly who do I think has the best chance to get all the way to the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Not to win one series, not even to win two series. Strictly how likely I think these teams are to hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Our first tier is our top tier contenders. These are teams that are so good and that have so much in the way of expectations that anything involving them losing before even getting to the finals would be considered a complete failure. These are teams that are championship or bust. Starting with number one, the Boston Celtics, who've been number one all year for me. They are currently at DraftKings at plus 235 to win the title. They've actually been supplanted as the favorite. On DraftKings now, the Thunder at plus 225 are the favorites. I don't like that value for OKC. I think it's far more likely that OKC gets beat in the West than Boston gets beat in the East. And I'd pick Boston over OKC head-to-head. So, like, in terms of the betting odds, I don't think that's a good price for OKC. But they are currently the favorite to win the title. Boston is the clear number one pick to me because they have the hardest weakness to exploit. They don't actually have a personnel weakness, really at all. They just have a personality weakness. They're top 6 in offense, defense, and defensive rebounding. They're a top 10 paint defense. They're a top 5 3-point line defense. And cleaning the glass currently has them as the number one transition defense in the NBA. Their weakness is they occasionally play really shitty basketball in the regular season. And that to me has so much more to do with just malaise than anything else. They have a 123 offensive rating against the top 10 teams in point differential, according to Cleaning the Glass. That ranks second in the NBA. And they're also 7th in defense in those matchups. In terms of win-loss in those matchups, they have a 69 win percentage against teams in the top 10 in point differential. That ranks number one in the NBA, even over the Thunder, even over the Cavs. I even think they've been feeling a little bit of like a reverse version of what the Cavs got in the early part of the year, where like several Celtics are shooting well below their norms from three. And I think that's something that will normalize over the tail end of the season. To me, they're better than the Thunder for a few key reasons. Number one, I think Jayson Tatum's gotten a lot better and is now on the same tier as a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I don't see the Thunder as having some substantial star advantage like I looked at it as a problem for the Celtics in years past. I also, too, think the Celtics are far more experienced down the roster in the playoff setting than OKC is. Later on, I'm going to talk to you guys about age, and I'm going to list some of the ages of some of the players on both rosters, and you guys will get a better feel for that. But I do think experience is a big advantage for Boston. And then 3, I think Boston's offense translates much better to the postseason than Oklahoma City's offense does. And I think the gap between these two teams defensively in the playoff context is substantially smaller. So I think Boston, what we're seeing from them, what we know they can do is more reliable in the playoff context than what we've seen from Oklahoma City. They're versatile too. They can protect the rim. They have great switching looks. They have big lineups. They have small lineups. They have more players that can initiate offense than anyone in the league, but at the same time, they have a ton of dudes who can play off ball as play finishers, and I think they have an easier path through the conference. I think Boston is the clear-cut championship favorite at this point. I think a lot of the stuff we've seen from them that's looked bad at times this year is mostly just dealing with the 82-game regular season after you've already won the trophy. And again, all these other teams that we're talking about are just dealing with another level of urgency. The Celtics are still a clear number one for me. Number 2, the Oklahoma City Thunder on DraftKings at plus 225 to win the title. The main point of optimism for me with the Thunder is their defense. They have the best defense in the league, and it isn't particularly close. The gap between their defensive rating and the second best defensive rating is the same as the gap between the second best defensive rating and the 10th best defensive rating in the NBA. They defend well in every single area like Boston does, but they also force a ton of turnovers and get out and transition off of those turnovers, which is something that Boston doesn't. The only thing they don't do well on defense is they're not a good defensive rebounding team. But that is just a real asset that they have in any playoff series. The best defense in the league that's going to provide a lot of problems for teams to deal with. I also think Oklahoma City has a much better primary weapon to deploy on stars in terms of Lu Dort, who I think is a top tier guy in that regard, and just like a real asset to just be able to put him on the other team's best player and just know for a fact that he's going to make that guy uncomfortable. He does it against guards like Donovan Mitchell and big old wings like Luka Doncic. Like, he's just as versatile as they get. Just a huge weapon for that defense. And statistically, their offense is excellent. They're 6th in overall offensive rating. They're 5th in half-court offensive rating. And Cleaning the Glass has them as the 4th best transition offense in the league. Shai is still the substantial favorite to win the MVP on DraftKings right now. So every metric would tell us that Oklahoma City is the best team in the league. Again, like I mentioned earlier, even DraftKings has them as the championship favorite. So why do I have Boston ahead of them? I think Oklahoma City's dominance in this particular regular season is a bit inflated over their playoff viability. I have consistently talked about over the years about how young, super athletic teams have a certain impact in the regular season that older veteran teams struggle to match. It gets even more exaggerated by the fact that in the regular season, you don't have as much time to prep. When you run into OKC for a single game on a random Tuesday in February, it can catch you off guard. You can get your butt kicked, especially when their defense is built on aggression and forcing mistakes. Every single one of their top 8 minutes per game guys in their rotation is 26 or younger. 3 of them are 23 or younger. Here's the Celtics as a counterexample. Of their top 8 rotation players, only Jayson Tatum is 26 or younger. And he's exactly 26. 3 of their top 8 are in their 30s. 2 of them are over age 34. You think those guys are going to bring the same level of nightly intensity that Oklahoma City is bringing this year? Of course not. When you get to the postseason, 2 things happen that limit the effectiveness of this hellacious style that Oklahoma City is playing. 1, all of the vets start matching the level of intensity that the young guys bring. Now, the young guys are still more athletic, but the gap shrinks as the vets engage for urgent basketball. And then 2, you get to prepare for several days for the matchup. And then even within the matchup, you get 2 weeks to try to solve the problem. Simple example. Last year, the Thunder were also a dominant, forcing turnovers, get out and transition type of team. In 4 regular season matchups against the Mavs, they forced 16 turnovers per game and scored 24.3 points off of those turnovers in the regular season. In the 4 losses to Dallas in the postseason, they only forced 14 turnovers per game, and they only scored 18 points off of them. More than 6 points less. That makes a substantial difference when you're splitting tiny margins between 2 great teams. The problem they present, the confusion, the chaos, the transition attack, the effectiveness goes down in the postseason because the vets are more up for it and teams are more prepared for it. So the question is, how good are the Thunder really? They're awesome. They're a top-tier contender. I think they're the second most likely to win the title. But the reality of who they are as a team is somewhere between what they were last year against Dallas and what they are now. Somewhere in the middle there. And I think that puts them firmly below the Boston Celtics.